Well, hey everybody, how you doing?
Hello, Mr. Witzemann.
Hey, holy shit! Somebody said the name right. That's scary.
I got it
Yes, like
right.
three
I said
times.
Witzemann earlier. Dova
Yeah,
corrected me.
I'm sorry, I'd
yeah.
say
It's
Weitzman.
really
I
close
don't
to
know.
white man.
No,
Yeah, you gotta
no,
think about
I
it like
know.
German,
White.
like Witzemann.
Yeah, it's Witzemann, right? Right. But no, it's funny. Like years ago, I was on the other side of the globe, and somebody called me, and I was quite drunk, and it was work related, and they called me Weitzman, and I went off on them. It was pretty funny.
Oh,
But
well, I do that all the time, and you never go off on me. I'm sorry.
well, I'd like to say I've gained a little bit of patience in my old age.
So how have you been receiving all this recent J6 drama this week?
I mean, without getting too deep into the weeds, I mean, particularly when you look at Jake Lang, I go, well, that's what you get.
Yeah.
The
When
guy's been drama since day one.
did you find out about it that day, or when Anarchy Princess posted it?
I know Dova was kind of saying, "Oh, you should hear this crap," and I was busy, and I was like, I don't know, screen record the good parts for me.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same old thing where I guess you don't really learn anything, but the guy just continues to expose himself for exactly what he is, and that's fine. There was, I've been dealing with that for a couple of years now, where people got really upset with me, and I won't get into naming all the names
Hmm.
of people who I think owe me an apology. They know who they are, um, but that's what you get. That's
We've
what you get.
literally had like four kind of hug it out sessions today, and it's actually been really nice to
Well, you
see.
should get Jake on the
But
space. I think that'll go really well.
I mean, I could try, but
Yeah, let's not. I'd rather
I
What
don't
not.
did
think
you
Shawn
say,
wants
I
that.
Philly?
I I pretty much got all of the questions I had for Jake. I got those out when I was at CPAC, and I went over to his Patriot Mansion or whatever. I asked my questions to his face, and it went about as well as I thought it would. So
Oh, you went to the where Tommy Tatum and everybody was at
yeah,
after.
yeah, yep,
Okay,
yep.
is that the one everybody was or people would stay in when they came in for their trials?
No, it was a separate deal, and I went and I, paid my respects to Mickey, over at the
Did,
house as well, while I was out there because, I would have been out there to cover a lot more of the trials, but I wasn't allowed to travel. Probation, they didn't mess around with me. They tried to shut me down a variety of ways,
well,
Well,
you
so.
were
you've got some crazy stories. If you're able to tell them about like what went down with you and legal representation, I don't know if you're allowed to tell those stories, but that was some crazy stuff.
Yeah, I guess the way I would put it in a public space is I would say I had, documentation, of, my attorney, the first attorney who had basically given the last money I had in the world, where, he was cooperating with the Department of Justice against me. Um, that's my opinion. And then it got to a point where it's like you don't have any money to do anything else. And that was going into my sentencing hearing. It got delayed a couple of times because I couldn't get him to represent my position effectively. He wanted me to go in there and just kind of like, I don't know, cry about it, I guess, which, I think I spoke for kind of, the unbiased nature. And like I've always said was, it was a breach of objectivity, you know, some of my behavior at the Capitol on January 6th, but I never viewed it as anything that, like I needed to walk around and lash myself over it. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, that was bad. And then just dealing with, a particular probation office supervisor out of the Springfield, Missouri area who really had it out for me and, basically made it impossible for me to travel for work or
hmm
anything else for that matter. They pretty much restricted me to the point where I remember, one time because they told me, and that was when I was working for Condemned USA, and Ashton was there as well.
Yep.
And they told me that they were no longer going to accept that as viable employment to satisfy the conditions of my probation. And I looked at my probation officer. I'm living in a freaking camper trailer in my parents' yard, and I just looked at him and I said, "Do you guys want me to kill myself? Is that what this is about?" And then they kind of backed off a little bit, but they were particularly upset because we had just released an article, in the Gateway Pundit. God forbid. Glad I'm not there anymore. But we had put out an article that talked about various people who were associated with Department of Homeland Security, um, agents that were on the ground that they had tried to obfuscate their role there. So I think they were particularly perturbed about that. I had recently, at that time, I'd put out an article about kind of the reality of what happened in East Palestine, with the disaster there that's still ongoing. Yeah, which that was actually kind of cool. One of the because at that time I was in a lot of different meetings with different people in the scientific community. Uh, and one of the things that was discussed to try to help those people out initially, and there was a lot of action to try to do that, was with Genesis Water Systems, which is actually owned by General Steve Quast, and he just did an interview on Shawn Ryan that was really good, and kind of white pilling a little bit to all the black pilling people get about technology and everything else that I think people should check out if you get a chance. I enjoyed it. It was about 3 hours. I listened to it yesterday on the way home. So, but yeah, it was a weird time, and probation was just wild. I
Were
was.
you on West Terrace? I forget where you were.
Yeah, I mean, I was initially there on the West Terrace, so I can't remember the exact time that I arrived. It was kind of after everything had gone to shit, and I made my way out right up to the front. So I was right there by the stairs when.
So you were near me
What the
when
hell's his name?
what,
The guy that kind of fell, got kind of shoved by a cop off of the
the guy
off
that
of the
fell
stairs.
shot?
Oh crap!
Was it Maccabee?
No, it wasn't Maccabee. I don't know why the guy's name's just skipping my mind.
Talking about the dude that got pushed off.
Yeah, and he hit the ground right next to me and everything, and that's when, like, say, things got. And from what I could observe, it got pretty weird there. I mean, I had people screaming at me because I had my live stream rolling, and they were like, "Did you get that on camera?" And I did. My live stream never uploaded, which was frustrating as well. So, like, I was able to stream live for a lot of it, but then all that footage was lost.
Dominic Box was right next to you
Yep,
then.
yep, yep,
Yeah, you guys were right
yep.
there. So did you make your way up by the tunnel?
No, I never got over that way. That was never what it was. I mean, by the time the police, did their thing where they kind of stood down on the West Terrace and then they started moving up, and the crowd all kind of moved up those stairs. And then, of course, you had the first breach happen um, over at the Senate doors.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Hey,
I was
hey,
there for all
Shawn.
that show.
Shawn,
Yeah.
hey, it's Dova. Um, like you don't know my voice. So what do you think about Dominic Box and just that?
I haven't even really looked into any of that much with any great detail or anything, so I can't really speak to.
The alley thing.
Oh
I
well,
didn't say Allie.
I don't know. I don't know what happened with all that. I know I had kind of my own back and forth with Allie because she was doing the whole thing
Well, she's a
that people do.
psycho. She's a fucking
Yeah,
psycho.
I don't know that
yeah.
she
Honestly.
She
hasn't met
she.
someone that she doesn't have a fight with yet.
No, but that's
I think
so
that's
true.
just kind of the way she is. She injects herself in things because our deal was about Brian Bettenker,
Oh God.
which regardless of whether it be J6 or anything else, like I said, the guy's a creep. You know,
Yeah.
which I that was the other thing that happened at CPAC was I just told him, I was like, have you ever tried like just talking to a woman or treating them like human beings? Maybe that would be cool.
Shawn.
How did he respond to
Oh, I don't know. He probably said something about, I'm an Antifa or whatever.
Why do you
So,
think that everybody says, "Oh, you're Antifa," like
well,
all the
it's
time?
funny,
It's always
another,
their
well, it's,
go-to. It's their fucking go-to. if we don't
It's
agree with
it's just a lame
anyone.
excuse. It's just a lame excuse. It's always been a lame excuse. It's kind of like the whole thing, where it's like very early on as the narrative control was pushing, and I always kind of reference back to a guy named Jason Funes who was trying to get me to really run with the, John Sullivan did everything wrong at the Capitol that day.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to get me to run with that narrative, and so he was sending me like the IDs of his parents, and I know he was pushing that to Giuliani at the time as well. It's been kind of my opinion was that was just to diminish kind of conservative support for J6ers in general, and I think it was pretty effective at the time because a lot of people just said, oh, it was all Antifa. The only people that did anything kind of out of control were Antifa, which is just objectively false. So it's just an easy excuse for people, right? They don't have to think about it. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
likes simple answers. They don't like complex answers.
Oh,
So
I
if you
agree.
can just say Antifa did it, then well, that makes
Yeah.
life easier, and you can go to Applebee's and you know what happened on January 6th.
Well, I always felt like when I saw the Brian videos, a lot of people on the other side were saying that he threatened to shoot up a school and all this shit, and I'm like, are you sure this guy's just not saying stuff for attention? You really think they seem like empty, very empty threats? The kids seem,
No,
It's
yeah, not
kind of
empty.
like how that goes. You get the quiet kid at school, right? Kind
yeah.
of kind of thing. Where again, this has been a problem. That in my opinion I've seen in the J6 space is that when you talk about people who were legitimately engaged in really bad behavior there, I don't look at everyone who was like they're Satan or anything like that. But we've got to be honest about what's real and what's not, and I think that there's been, for a lot of reasons, just a refusal to do that
Yeah.
among a lot of people, and like that's what that is. That's the difference between narrative control and truth seeking.
You're speaking of narrative control. Have you heard about the chick who found the pipe bomb working at Pendulum that specializes in AI based
Oh
narrative?
no.
Yeah, I know that there was some stuff. I mean, we looked into Younger really early on. I actually wrote an article, and it was funny. That was the article that kind of was the beginning of bad blood between Julie Kelly and myself, where she attacked me and she told me she was going to blackball me and everything else, and it was pretty funny. She was very
Over
upset
the
over
phone.
Oh,
that.
I've got a
Yeah,
fun little story about her walking out of the courtroom too. That woman.
Why
yeah.
was she pissed about you bringing up Colin Younger?
I don't know.
Well,
Why did Julie Kelly donate to a bunch of Democrats? I don't know.
I don't know, but I want to hear Lady Layman's story about Julie now.
oh, it's just a little bit petty. We were sitting next to each other on the benches during the Proud Boys trial, and I didn't know obviously a lot of the things that like what Sean's talking about. I hadn't had those experiences, but I just leaned over and tried to say like, "Hi, my name's Ashton," da da da, and just politely say hello. And she completely brushed me off, like, "Okay, thanks, goodbye." But then she watched me walk out of the courtroom with Stephen Metcalf, who I was working with and for at the time, and all of a sudden, she wanted to be my best friend. And I blew right past her and proceeded to blow her off every chance that I will ever get. That woman is pathetic.
Quick question, because I've never really gotten to engage with her in person, but I always kind of imagined like if there were any flies buzzing about, that a tongue might just fly out of her head and like eat it.
Well, potentially. I mean, there was one of
Okay.
those people around her, and his name was Ryan Riley. But
Oh,
Yeah, I
come
wanted to
on.
ask. I
I
wanted to
liked
ask.
Ryan.
I
Come
know you
I
on.
do.
wanted. To, hey, I wanted to ask Shawn what his original beef was with Julie. If you can say that in a couple words. I don't know what
Yeah,
really.
yeah, that's basically what went down. Was that when I was working with Stop Hate and David Summerall, I had written an article, went back, traced it all to original sources. At the time, Daniel Goodwin was doing a lot of the research, so he pushed a bunch of stuff my way. I said, "Yeah, I think I can turn this into a story." And so I turned it into a story, and Julie Kelly got very mad about that. She basically claimed that that was all of her reporting, and that was debatable to me. And I just told her at the time, I said, "Well, you can take that up with David Summerall because he's the publisher." I said, "I don't have any,
Well, the irony there
whatever.
is
It
too.
is what it
Well,
is."
sorry. The irony I
Yeah,
find that is how many times has she put up something that we know damn good and well whose watermark she removed?
sure. Sure, but that's been kind of her whole thing all along. It's just like now she's the unofficial spokesperson for the FBI over there, simping for, Cash
I mean,
Patel
I
and
just hey,
Bongino. When objectively you look at them, they're not doing a good job.
they got away with it, and it's just she just doesn't care. So we shouldn't care.
Yeah, yeah. She, that's
Did
the
you?
thing.
Uh,
She donated to Democrats. You can look and see who her husband is. She's a political operative. She's a propagandist. She worked for Monsanto. She's not interested in being an actual journalist. She's just
I've
interested
heard.
in sucking up to all the right people so that she can put her name on everything. And everyone will say, you got Bannon over there, the great Julie Kelly. Like, come on, get out of here.
Mm, I've heard this before.
The influencer circle strikes again.
Well, yeah, it's like, I will always talk about, I'm really running my mouth now, watch out. But I always talk about people, putting marbles up their ass, whether we want to talk about Jake Lang or whatever, too, with his behavior as of late. But I saw that, obviously with Stu Peters, which was somebody that I'd worked with in the lead up to January 6th. I gave him reports from on the ground, um, and he wouldn't even write a letter for me to the freaking judge in my case, saying that I was doing that. And I remember him on the phone. He's like, "Oh, bro," he's like, "You don't know. I'm just under too much pressure. I just can't do that. I'm the people's bullhorn. I can't have the FBI coming after me because I wrote a letter for you." Yeah. Meanwhile, his boss over at Ops
And
Lens
you're not
Media
that
didn't have a
important.
problem with it at all. Ron Hammond, he wrote a letter for me, no questions asked. But Stu Peters, bro, I'm people's bullhorn.
Mm.
So,
Hey
and then you see
Andrew,
what,
have
and
you?
then you see how he's acting now. Again, marbles up the ass.
Hey Andrew, have you seen Stu Peters' rap music?
Stu Peters has a rap song.
Yes, he's had
Oh,
many
stop!
lives.
Yes, he
Shut
has.
up.
Well, it's fun fact. A very good friend of mine, who was one of the people contributors to American Council for Truth and Journalism. We call him Combat Rev. But he actually wrote a lot of Stu Peters' early monologues. I got Stu Peters his first guest for his show, which was my good buddy Brett Coconatus, who was kind of an interesting gay Republican from New Mexico. That was Stu Peters' first guest. So he's kind of come a long way from when we helped him start that show, and of course he's really big in his britches now, and apparently pushing Mein Kampf as a textbook or something in schools. Which not that I don't think kids shouldn't read Mein Kampf. I think they should, but anyway.
Yeah,
So he has one single song out on. It's on Apple Music. Is it called "Out in the Open"?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember the name. I don't remember, but check out his video. It's hysterical.
I don't. But
Dude,
yeah, Lori, come on. It doesn't even hold a candle to Corinne's music videos, though. Come on,
Oh
right?
yeah, no,
Yeah,
she's the queen.
yeah.
oh my god, I gotta
And
see this
I
shit.
say this stuff with a grain of salt. It's like Ashton, talking. What is it? Happy baby pose? Because years ago I had
Yeah.
done this troll where I like laid on my bed in a thong or whatever, and it went like viral. So whatever. You got to have a little fun
Wait,
with life,
was
but
that you in front of me in the window with the thong on?
probably, yeah.
Did you see that?
No, no.
Dude,
Holy
look
shit, was
up
that just Shawn?
the
What's
first thing
wrong with thongs,
in the
Andrew?
jumbotron, dude.
What's wrong with thongs?
Tell me that's not a thong. Corey says it's a t-shirt. Go the first thing in the jumbotron. That was my video as I go in the window, and I didn't realize till I got home and when
Let
people
me see.
texting me back videos I sent out. Tell me that's not a boy shorts with a thong riding up his
Hold
ass.
on, hold on. Let me see. Let me see.
You're the expert opinion here. That's a thong, dude. There's no way it's not a thong.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a butt crack and a t-shirt. That's not.
Well, you don't see it going up his crack?
Well, see, if his undies were hanging down, then we might have to just give him an unofficial plumber's license. So
But do you think that's a t-shirt or a thong? Or
uh, it just looked like, honestly, like maybe he's wearing like Superman underwear or something like that. I don't
those
know,
are
like
definitely not.
like
Do you
It's
think
not
he
a
got an
shirt.
Antifa wedgie?
what is an Antifa wedgie exactly?
I don't know. Sounds like something.
Dude, that when I saw that, when I got home, I'm like, oh shit, Antifa was in that room. There's no way this is a Trump supporter with his panties on. I mean, maybe, but
Derek
you know,
Vargo, yeah, that was the guy that fell right there or was pushed, depending on how you want to look at it.
Depending on which camera you're looking at.
Right.
no, he was pushed, right? I mean,
Yeah, so
isn't
it's
that
funny when you talk about the tunnel because I know that. Hey, I think it was like in 2023, might have been 22. I just remember I was in a hotel parking lot, so I was somewhere doing something. So it couldn't have been 23. Must have been 22. And somebody hit me up and they were like, "We need to identify this person." You know, they were over there doing stuff at the window, and we just know it was Antifa. You know, and we need to know who this person is. And I talked with I won't name a name, but one of the other kind of J6 advocacy researchers at the time, and we just kind of said, I said. I said, I think that's Gina, and and they were like, yeah, I think that's Gina, and I was like, yeah, I don't really know what to tell this person who asked us the question either. We just kind of said, well,
did you
there it
guys see
is.
American Summer's post about there's another Gina Bisagno and he's like uh she stole her identity. It's like a different person and she's also a beautician in LA. Have you guys seen that?
No, I haven't. Do I want to?
Yeah, she says it's well, I think he says it's Gina, but she's like, "Oh, it's just a person I know,
Okay.
but they look alike." It's like if it was something, I would have sent it to you, Sean.
I don't know. Yeah, like I like American Summer. I think, I appreciate a lot of things he's done. Some of the stuff I've seen of late, I'm just like, I don't know, man. It's kind of going a little too wacky for my taste. Way too
Yeah,
much speculation, not enough fact.
I did a lot of research with him, and then we hit a point where I'm just like, dude, I get it, but everybody can't be a psyop. Like literally like I look at myself in video, and I'm like,
Well,
I
yeah, I
could
mean, I
literally think
think,
I'm a psyop.
well, there's, it's like you don't even have to be a willing participant. I mean, that's something that I kind of beat up regularly when I talk about, particularly KGB ideological subversion ops that were started 70 years ago. And they were intended to be multi-generational plans
Mm-hmm.
where you end up having people who believe that they're acting, in their own best interests, but they're
Yeah.
not. So, that's kind of the nature of psychological warfare, and it's ugly. That's what I
So
said.
you're
I
saying,
said in my, that article I wrote about CPAC and just kind of, some thoughts I had after all that. That's what I just said. Actually, it was my mom who gave me the line, and she just talked about, veterans of fifth generation war.
mm-hmm.
And that's really where we're at. I mean, it's kind of an ugly time where you have a lot of different foreign actors. They've got their agendas, and that was kind of my trying to track down different things that I saw that day, and what I was told by different contacts and sources that I had within the intelligence community was that there were multiple agencies at play that day with multiple agendas. And I think that George Hill, who's
Do you have a mini rainmaker that you're going back and forth with?
uh,
It's like a. Do you guys hear that?
oh, it's probably
I think
something
it's just
horrible in my audio. This phone's getting old, so the connection on the stupid Apple Lightning port doesn't work that well. And then my beard scratches against it too. That's what it
Oh, that
is.
might.
Do you trust George Hill, Sean? Do you trust what he said?
I do.
Okay.
George Hill, through all of this mess, he's become somebody that I can, really have some good conversation with and check my own biases. I mean, the guy was, senior intelligence analyst. Um, he's no joke. He's been through it all. He served at Gitmo prior to his time in the FBI. I mean, he's kind of seen the whole world. Um,
Um,
so yeah,
Sean is the Fed whisperer.
I don't know. It's wild where I've just had frankly what I consider to be the honor to speak with a lot of the people that I have and consider their opinions. And it's like I've told everybody. I've said this in the open multiple times. The problem when you're dealing with spooky people is, you know, if they're feeding you information, you have to consider why they're doing it too. That's just the nature of it. So I tend to end up sitting on a lot more information than I ever put into public, because if there's no way to verify it, there's no way to verify it. But
Yeah.
if it informs where I'm looking for verifiable information, then that's where it has been helpful.
Hey,
Mhm.
so
And like
Shawn,
I said, yeah.
out of all of the people that you know here, which let's
Mm-hmm.
look, American Terrorist. So Andrew, is he spooky?
Who?
Uh, he doesn't really strike me as spooky, but
Am
who
I?
knows? You're definitely spooky.
Walked right into that one.
Dude, so you've done a lot of research on like the intelligence community.
Yes.
Um, have
Yeah, basically he's just like friends with Jamie Pruitt / David Duchovny.
I'm gonna put
Thank you for knowing
the
that reference.
you don't gotta look into it now, but I'm gonna put the website pendulumintel.com.
Yeah.
Um, it's really interesting if you go through it. So I don't know if you saw the post about it, but they specialized in controlling the narrative from basically from COVID about vaccine hesitancy.
Okay.
Uh,
Were they contracted with the government?
that's what I'm trying to figure out. But all I know
Okay.
is that Carlin Younger's the project manager there now,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and this is the company that they say it right on their site that they were responsible for pretty much controlling the narrative on YouTube and all that during the election. You know how you posted on YouTube after 2020, they would take your
Sure.
post down and give you a strike.
Sure.
So this company was they brag about it on their site that they were responsible for controlling the narrative surrounding QAnon, election integrity, and vaccine hesitancy. So Carlin Younger is now the project manager there, the chick who found the pipe bomb. And Jacktron, if you go to his page, just JAC,
Probably a pretty good gig too.
yeah, I bet she makes some decent money.
Yeah.
But
Good for her.
Jacktron did a big thread on this, and he goes through every employee that works there. Um, I'd be interested in hearing what you think after you read all about that, if you're interested, because
Yeah. Well, I'll try. You know, honestly, send me a DM at some point too, and just make sure it gets
okay,
left in there, and I'll try to have a look at it.
Jack
awesome.
Tron's a little odd. I'm just gonna say, Andrew. I mean, he has a lot of information, but he seems a little odd to me.
Oh,
Jack Tron. You talking about the guy in
yeah. Well,
space?
he's openly autistic. He tells everybody that. Like
Oh
he's
well, that's not why I'm saying that. I'm just saying some of the. I can see why you might align with him because he seems to go off on different
no.
tangents.
I don't even really see his
Ouch.
post. I just
I
know
know.
that he made one post about Carlin Younger, and I had been kind of digging into her for years, and then it was like an updated. Um, I didn't know about Pendulum, the new company. I knew she got $93 million from the FBI before J6. I knew about her startup Fireflight. Um, I knew a lot of shit about her before that, but then recently he started posting about everybody that works at this company, Pendulum, and the fact that she got a grant for Fireflight, but she didn't stick around. She took off and went to Pendulum right after that.
You know,
So
here's kind of the problem I'll point out with a lot of this stuff is that by its very nature, if somebody was involved in some sort of covert op or something like that, you know, proving it is pretty much impossible.
yeah,
So
I I mean,
that's the issue, is that you just kind of lead yourself into this world of endless speculation with no way to verify anything,
yeah,
and it's kind of a fool's errand. I mean, I've kind of had the very cynical viewpoint where I'm like, well, in 25 years, you know, they might declassify some of the things that were going on January 6th, but
yeah.
you know, I mean, look at
Oh,
the
nice.
JFK files. I mean, you know, Epstein files. Come on. They,
So do you believe Epstein hung himself, like Cass just said?
it's possible he hung himself. in my estimation of it. But again, it's like at some point, does it matter? I mean, look, a guy in his position, let's say he did hang himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what option did he have at that point? Who knows that he may have been threatened with a variety of other things if he didn't. So, does it really matter if he did the hanging himself at that point or if somebody else did it? It's kind of irrelevant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're gonna agree with Julie Kelly?
Let me make sure that I agree with Julie Kelly before I agree with Julie Kelly. Um, to me, it's not so much the whether or not he hung himself, but what I do see, what I don't like about her take on that is she's essentially running cover for this slow walk of information that really should be released, and it probably wouldn't be as bad for them to kind of to make that point and tell people, oh, we're just looking out for innocent people or whatever, blah blah blah. If they hadn't handed the stupid binders to all the social media influencers and paraded around like they'd done something, they look like a bunch of idiots when
Yeah,
they
that was
do
dumb.
things like that. So,
Hey, they had some very nice 3-ring binders.
oh my god,
That was stupid.
it's just it's a real bad look. Um, and I've got my own real cynical theories about why we'll never see, you know, the Epstein files to any meaningful effect. But
I think that's the funniest thing that they've done so far is they've sidestepped the entire topic by going, "Oh, well, he didn't kill himself. He did kill himself." I don't
right,
think that anyone's really that concerned about that. I'm more concerned about who's being blackmailed because they were raping children on his island. Like
right,
that was kind of the
All of
bottom line.
right. I mean, that's honestly the nature of the whole game, and that I know that I had conversations about Chris Ray and why he left his um, private position to go be FBI director. You get immense amount of power. It's kind of like the One Ring if you control the Epstein file. So even when you look at the way that's being managed, I kind of always reference people back to the way the information about Whitey Bulger in Boston was managed during his time when he was likely CIA asset, FBI asset. There's certain people that are untouchable for a lot of reasons. That all gets buried under national security, and you know it is what it is. We all get to live in the dark. The
That
nature
was
of
also a
the
lot of the
nature of
ways.
statecraft.
Yeah, that was also a lot of the things they would use to hide discovery from
Yeah.
the juries.
Yep. Well, and that's the same thing that has been used. When people talk about whether or not they should release all the video, which they never did. Yeah, they say national security, national security. It's like, okay, well, what are you hiding?
Well, it doesn't make sense if there's no feds in the crowd how it could be a national security threat.
Again, there's another term that could go a few different ways. Feds, and I think specificity is
Well, and that's
always
why I used it
important.
because I don't know what I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And
you think there's no feds in the crowd? Is that what you said?
what's up?
But no, Lady Layman, you said that you think there's no fed. There were no feds.
No, I said if there was no feds in the crowd, then how could it be a national security issue to release more of the footage?
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, they're saying no agents, but there were CIs in the crowd. Um, they've said that a while ago, though.
Well, then they came back and said like 26 or so assets. They didn't really
Yeah,
specify what that's necessarily meant, but
Well, my thing's always been like if they were undercover, even with not an agent, but a CI is undercover in a protest, it has to be submitted to the FBI headquarters before the undercover operation. And if that does not exist, then that's a violation of every person's First Amendment right that attended the protest.
If you want to get real deep into the weeds, start digging into the tip documents and the Transition Integrity Project and Samuel Armez and his connection to the 1776 returns documents. And also specifically Scenario 2 and their little war games. It's really weird.
You know,
Yeah.
don't you think they took my understanding, I'm clearly not an expert, as Andrew calls me, I'm a mom Tifa, that the confidential human sources were just snitches from previous cases that chose to go to Jan 6. Isn't that who the 26 people were? Am I wrong?
I think that that could explain a fair amount of it for sure. I mean, you just get into a weird situation. You know, I've often said it's like, well, you probably had different confidential sources who behaved badly. I mean, they're not exactly usually the cream of the crop when it comes to human beings. Let's be honest.
Hey,
Hmm.
Shawn, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
Do you think that Jake Lang was a CHS or anything
Erica.
like that?
For right now, what I will say is there's a lot of interesting information that's starting to squeal its way out.
Rachel, you got to tell us if he is. I'm
How
joking.
would she know? Why does everybody always put the
I'm
pressure on
joking.
her? Come
Fucking
on.
with Rachel. I think. I think
Thank
Rachel.
you for answering that, Shawn.
Yeah, I mean that's as confidently as I'm willing to say it. Anything about that publicly. I know a lot of people have made that allegation, but a lot of people made that allegation about me too. So again,
What was the answer?
everybody speculate to whatever degree you want.
You mean
She
what?
just asked was
Wait, what was the question?
yeah,
I heard the question, I just didn't hear the answer.
Oh, the answer was there's a lot of interesting information that's beginning to squeal its way out.
squealing. Like, can you do the squealing noise? Ah,
Like a dying frog.
It's because if I'm a Julie Kelly frog, I haven't been able to eat a fly lately or something.
that was actually a pretty squeal. I didn't think you were going to do that good. On call. I didn't even expect you to do it.
I low key feel like we've found unity and that we all dislike Julie Kelly.
I'd like to
Without
meet people before I decide that. I've met her.
Shawn.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's another one where it's like you get told early on, you're like, well, don't go up against her. Don't say things against her.
The only reason people like that are so scary is because there's like 13 people who are scared to tell the truth.
Hmm.
It's
Or
Like
30.
politics. It's politics.
it's
When you've got a bunch of people who are all like vying for power or influence or whatever, you know, it's a giant circle jerk.
So is Rachel going to answer for Jake in that question that I asked or not?
You didn't ask her.
oh, she didn't have to.
Um,
as
oh, Sean, you know what? You know you study a lot of the intelligence stuff. I'm curious to know. Have you ever heard of the iPause system?
Like IP8,
IPAW.
nah, I don't think so. Maybe.
I forget what it stands for, but it basically is like the abbreviations for the emergency system, like the police, the
Oh
fire.
yeah.
So, what do
Yeah,
you
we
know
looked at that, right, Ashton? Didn't we talk about that years ago?
about what? The
Talk
iPause?
about what? Oh, I missed it.
About you're talking about like the system they had to tell everyone in DC there's an emergency or whatever.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the PA system.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So there was an interesting video from like way back Sandy Hook era, and there was this lady. I found this after January 6th, and there was this lady explaining kind of how these drills work, just like a drill, like a fire drill at a high school. You know, it's to strengthen the system at the school so they know how to prepare and handle actual real events or real fires. So how she was explaining it, like in dimensions, where you have dimension 1 and 2, that would be the normies that are just the crowd. Dimension 3 would be like the people that are being controlled through their emotions without knowing they're actors. And then you have Dimension 4 that are like the people in charge of guiding or misguiding Dimension 3, who's guiding Dimension 2, and the fifth dimension would be the future outcome. So the way she was explaining it was like, not all events, but there are events that are basically planned as drills to manipulate and to basically study human behavior for future events. I'll post let me put this in. So I think that when I look into the Carlin Younger thing, I'm like, I don't know why people don't think it's that big of a deal, but I think it's the most fascinating story of the day. I think there's definitely something fishy about it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what would you say?
I've long said that, you know, I think people need to understand that when you deal with um, ops,
Hmm.
that you are dealing with people who have a very good understanding of behavioral psychology, and there was a lot of flocking behavior on January 6th.
Oh yeah.
You know, so if you have a good understanding of how, you know, that mob mentality gets whipped up into a frenzy, then, you know, theoretically you can influence that. Well, I mean, theoretically, I mean, in practice, I would say. So,
Did you know that they processed the first 60 people through a police academy and not the police station, or like didn't fingerprint us or take pictures of our tattoos?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it felt like a drill, dude. They actually used the papers they used on the bus when I asked them, because they told us it was curfew violation, which I thought was like a ticket. You just pay a ticket and go
Sure,
about your way.
sure.
But when we got on the bus, I'm like, "What are we arrested for?" And the guy says curfew, and I'm like, "What do you mean? Isn't that just a ticket? Am I really under arrest?" So they brought us all to. It was like an hour away. I'm still trying to figure out where they brought us to, but it was this really remote building, um, and it wasn't a police station. It was like four padded rooms. It was four rooms. It was like a mini little school, kind of felt like that, where they had like these gym mats in each room. And as soon as we got in, they had about six older men sitting at these little desks, and each officer stood with us and took us and stood us in front of each guy for, I don't know, 30 seconds. And each guy at their computer would look up at us, look down like they were checking footage or something, or I don't know, a wanted list or whatever they were looking at. We didn't know. But we went one at a time in front of these five people. They looked at us. We moved to the next one. Then they put us in these three different rooms and separated us. Then when we were getting ready to go to lockup, they took half of us, put us in one line, let those 25, 30 people pay $25 and go home, walk right out of the door. And I asked the dude when we were there, I'm like, why are they going home and we're going to lockup? What the hell's going on? And the officer said that we were guilty by association. Um, Not sure what that meant, but I have some theories on it. But it's just always been odd to me that they were training their police that day at the academy with the first arrest from like the curfew arrest.
Hmm.
It was all done at a police academy. I don't even know if that's legal. It felt like we were fake arrested. I kept asking, I'm like, are we really arrested? This is curfew, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's always been odd to me. The fact that they used a police academy and then they changed our charges from curfew. Half the people paid $25 to go home, but then our half, who Joshua Pruitt, I think he's a Proud Boy, he was part of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mo Mendez, my buddy, me, and actually one guy that killed himself the next day. I forget his name. He was in the cell across from me. They left his door open It was really odd when we got to the lockup area, but they didn't even when we got there. They didn't even fingerprint us there. There was no like. It felt like it was all fake, really. So I don't know if that's normal. I'm not really, you know, from DC, but maybe that's normal with a big event. They utilize the police academy because they don't have room, but there were only 60 people arrested. They could have easily processed us right there in DC, but we drove out of DC somewhere. I'm not sure where.
Mm.
Does that make you think that
I
that
don't know.
may,
I would like to see some sort of documentation about that
yeah,
if it was
me too.
available.
Get it.
Yeah, yeah, which I'm guessing you don't have it.
No,
Otherwise,
I actually just reached out to my first attorney, um, so I can try to get a hold of that because I think it's important to know the names of the people that paid $25 and went home because those potentially were J6ers. I mean, they would have been charged, but
yeah.
they weren't. They paid a ticket. Um, so I don't know if the tickets are public information. I think they are, but I'm gonna work on trying to get those names and find out about what location they brought us to because I just never really thought much of it until I started telling people that work in prisons and jails, and they're like, "What? Police academy? They're not supposed to do that." You know?
Well, it's it's like everything else that I've ever been involved in. It's the minor details. You know,
Yeah,
it's little stuff that you don't think is important, and then later on it becomes very important. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Like,
That is interesting.
I'll try to get you something on it as soon as
Huh.
my gets back. Um, as soon as I have it, I'll share it. I'll tag in it.
Yeah, man, appreciated.
But yeah, I'm gonna send you the. What did I say I was gonna send you before?
Oh, the thing about younger.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, just dump that in my inbox so that I've got it
okay,
handy.
all right, awesome.
All right, Shawn, are you gonna leave?
I am gonna leave.
All right, tell the boys I love them.
I know. I'm gonna play video games with them.
All right.
All right.
Have fun.
Yep. Y'all don't have too much fun.
Do some happy baby
We're getting ready
Absolutely.
to
Every
wrap up.
chance I get.
every day.
Bye.